Hey everyone, welcome back to the Scalp Society's Hair Loss Hot Takes. I'm Carrie, the board certified trichologist and founder of the Scalp Society, where we train hair professionals to understand what is actually happening at the follicle instead of just guessing at it. Today, I have a guest that I have been so excited to host, Dr. Tyler Panzner. Dr. Panzner holds a PhD in Molecular and Cellular Pharmacology. Your whole focus is now personalized supplementation and genetic pathways to show what individual biochemical bottlenecks are and why the one-size-fits-all protocols don't work for everybody. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, neuropharmacology, so how substances, drugs, or supplements in my area, what I really love, really affect how we feel mood-wise of things, and did do some research work on breast cancer, so inflammation side of things, and kind of left that traditional scientist career path. You know, I'm not a medical doctor. I was the scientist with the goggles, the lab coat,
Whoa.
making custom mice that get certain types of tumors, breaking those down, editing DNA of cancer cells, really boots on the ground like research scientist. And just really always loved natural supplements, and kind of ended up going down that route more on the health coaching side, utilizing genetics. And the more I got into it, I've been on social media now for probably 3-4 years at this point. It's just crazy the lack of real education around how these supplements work. So I'm really vocal about, everyone's talking about all the benefits of all these flashy things and marketing, and you're told to take this from this influencer, this from this doctor with a massive podcast, but these supplements can interact differently with your unique body, and they can interact with each other and really cause a lot more harm. So I'm really on a mission to educate, not to fearmonger, but to help people make more informed decisions.
I really appreciate that too, because as a trichologist, we are looking at more of, when we have clients that come in, they have maybe been to a dermatologist, have been introduced to these different medical routes, which has its place absolutely too. But we are, trained very loosely on supplementation. And I had learned really quickly into digging in, reading some studies, that supplementation should not just be given to people in excess and thrown at everyone, because it could really cause, some changes in their body that we have to be really aware of. I really wanted to start out today, though. We had spoken briefly about something that I had found so fascinating about the follicle itself, is that it runs as its own endocrine organ. Can you expand on that a little bit?
So these follicles, that our hair are growing out of, they are some of the most sensitive areas of the body. So when it comes to things like thyroid health, or another thing you could think of too is, my background in cancer, I always think about this when it comes to hair as well. When there's chemotherapy, right, these are rapidly dividing cells. What are the first things to fall out due to chemotherapy? These are very, very sensitive organs, whether it's to minor disturbances in the thyroid health. We know that hair loss can be due to thyroid issues. So it's really a very, very sensitive area of the body that if you're in suboptimal health, it doesn't necessarily mean you're sick enough for the hospital, right? But you're starting to have thinning hair, you're suffering from hair loss or hair shedding. That's most of the time a sign that something's going wrong under the hood of the car, inside of your cells, but it may not be so drastic that you feel absolutely horrible quite yet.
Absolutely. No, you're so right with that. We had talked about DHT being a big factor in the things that us as trichologists are looking for. And oftentimes, maybe just from your experience and your vast knowledge on, the internal works, maybe you could give a little light into DHT when it comes to your hair follicle, and then about how the different things might impact that, because that is, of course, one of the biggest things that we see in our spaces is dealing with DHT, either, if we have a client with multi-factors, or that might be their highlighted one.
Yeah. So before I get to that, I just want to zoom out a bit even more, because DHT gets pretty much all the conversation now around hair loss. You have companies like Hims all over the place pushing these, DHT medication blockers, topical, oral, and we'll definitely dive more into that. But we need to remember everyone's a unique flavor, right? And we'll get into the flavor of why your DHT may be an issue. But before we get to that, we also need to understand, we have the more androgenic alopecia, so more of that DHT-driven hair loss. But then a lot of my clients are women, usually around that menopausal age, and that can be a whole other, flavor of hair loss. So what is your flavor? Why are you trying to take Hims to lower your DHT if it could be your lack of estrogen due to that menopause transition that's causing that? These are different flavors, different molecular drivers underneath from that. That lack of estrogen, that can impair blood flow, which of course is a major factor. We want to get oxygenation to the scalp, but also could affect things like oxidative stress buffering capability. So how sensitive these already sensitive follicular cells are to that oxidative stress, which could be, again, due a lot of different root cause factors. Then there is the DHT side of things. And DHT, one of the most powerful hormones in the body. And it's not to be outright demonized. One thing I'm very vocal about, I always do this dotted line that I draw. Like, if this is your DHT levels, if this is where you should be, we first need to understand where are you at on that. Because people will be taking things like finasteride, minoxidil. We'll talk about some natural supplements as well that can lower DHT. It all comes down to turning testosterone into DHT using this 5-alpha reductase enzyme, the 5-AR enzyme in the body. Now, we need to understand where are you at, because if your DHT isn't an issue and you lower it, now you're too low. Now you can run into issues. I mean, this is mainly for the male side of things. They'll call it like post-finasteride syndrome. And there's actually some data coming out with that if you take these orally active, they crush DHT levels throughout your whole body. They can help with hair loss. Mm-hmm. They can also help with prostate cancer, because high DHT can be linked to prostate cancer. Obviously, that doesn't apply to the women's side of things. But we want to understand, we don't want to lower something just for the sake of lowering something. I've seen, there have actually been studies that finasteride use has been linked to increased risks of suicide among men. So the studies are coming out. They can be safe if used properly, but we need to also break up between our systemic DHT levels that would show up on a blood test and the local DHT in our hair follicles. So these can actually be different. So chronic inflammation and insulin resistance, a lot of these can go very hand in hand together. Poor blood sugar regulation, that can increase the amount or activity of that 5-AR enzyme in the scalp. So if you get your DHT levels drawn, it may not look very high, but in the hair follicles, it actually is high, which is driving some of that androgenic hair loss. So if someone, when we take these medications, if it's orally, it does the whole body. If we do it topically, then that is a lot more local overall. Now, there are also various natural supplements that can block this enzyme. We have things like curcumin, curcumin, reishi mushroom, astaxanthin, saw palmetto. The active ingredient in that is beta-sitosterol, pumpkin seed oil, lycopene. These are all supplements that can either block that conversion or block that testosterone receptor. So if there's not less DHT, less of it's able to bind, because we need to remember, it doesn't matter what's in your body, it matters what your cells can detect inside of your body. So there's natural ways to do this. You know, there are different products that advertise as this, and I always thought it's interesting that, you know, a product that's a good combination that I've seen work well for people that are high androgen. It's Prostate Supreme from Designs for Health. I have no affiliation with them at all. I just like the product. And it's a combination of a good bit of these. And it's just interesting, you know, I've worked with, whether it's women with PCOS or PMOS or high androgens, and it's like, you're going to have me take a prostate health supplement? And I'm like, yeah, because we want to think in terms of molecules and pathways.
I love that.
The reason why it's for prostate is because poor prostate health is linked to high DHT. So can be your androgenic hair loss. So it doesn't matter. That's just the marketing, on the bottle, right? So it's understanding, is it more local or not, right? I think a lot of us in the health space know we want to make sure we're trying to move our bodies. We're not eating a lot of refined carbohydrates. So I'm not going to go into all the super, low-hanging fruit here. But, and I'm curious, have you utilized any of those nutrients to kind of help on that DHT side on your end?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And this is why I talk to people like you, is because, it is really important for us to understand and know these things. I do want to, just point back to a couple of things that you said that I really appreciate because of little light bulb moments going off as you're speaking. First, I really appreciate you speaking on, postmenopausal women, because in a lot of our training with trichology within the U.S. Can be all over the place. And when professionals are coming out of their trichology training, they are blanketing DHT for everything. Yeah. And while yes, with female pattern hair loss, you may be seeing that DHT impacting, but as you said, it may be that reduction in estrogen or other layers that are going into it. So many people are just going in and throwing all this stuff for DHT at it when, you may need to be juggling multiple things, and oftentimes are, right? So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, because, it's, if only we're that simple. And I've worked with many men with PFS, post-finasteride syndrome. Okay. They're messed up for like long periods of time. Lion's mane mushroom can also be another one as well. I don't have, so there's multiple reasons why that DHT can be elevated. The one I, of course, focus on is the genetic side of things. We can see how well or not well you convert testosterone to DHT. We can also see how sensitive your androgen receptor is to testosterone and DHT. Okay. So if you have both of those boxes checked, you're going to be a lot more prone. And that's what we see in the literature. This is not things that are just made up, just mechanistic. A lot of these actually have data that we actually see genetic risk factors for androgenic alopecia. Now, I'm not one of those people. I have a full head of hair. I don't think I'm, knock on wood, I have very, very thick hair. And when I took lion's mane, or when I tried astaxanthin, I felt bad. Within a day or two, I felt not good. And I was one of the lucky people where I stopped it, and after 2 or 3 days, I was totally back to normal. That doesn't happen for everybody because my DHT isn't high. So why am I taking a supplement that can bring down the DHT even further? I'm going to run into issues. Now, the genetics, that's what I focus on with my testing, but we mentioned the metabolic side of things. Inflammation can do that as well. And whether it's leaky gut, toxin exposure, a lot of things, low omega-3s, a lot of things can affect that. Gut dysbiosis can also play a role in that as well. Now, certain types of bacteria can produce beta-glucuronidase. So this can deconjugate estrogen in the gut, and this can kind of shift that androgen to estrogen ratio, which may also potentially be playing a role in that. Now, zinc and selenium are micronutrients to help that 5-AR enzyme do its job. So we want to be mindful of those levels as well. So, it's which flavor are you? That's just the DHT itself. Poor mitochondrial health can, right? Poor circulation. So there's all of these different factors that do come into play here. Yeah. But what I'm very, very passionate about is what I call the iceberg effect of natural supplements. So, you're taking curcumin. Curcumin's been shown to help with DHT, help lower it, which can cause issues for some people. But what else does curcumin do? Well, we know it helps with inflammation, which is great. But curcumin is also an iron chelator. So it can pull iron, you can pull iron out of the body. Now, what's interesting is most of these polyphenols and things like a quercetin or a resveratrol or an EGCG, green tea extract, a lot of these have data at helping with hair growth, but they also can lower iron. So we know that iron is very important for hair growth. I mean, anemia can be one of the biggest drivers of hair loss. So this is where it gets really nuanced here. I wish it was as simple as take curcumin. I've seen curcumin, a supplement that has been shown to help with hair loss, make people's hair loss worse. Because for you, we want to balance this out. You have the DHT lowering effects, and we have, or the anti-inflammatory effects, and then we have the iron chelation effects. So are you someone with plenty of iron? You're not having your curcumin around any of your iron meals? Well, then this may be a good fit for you. Or are you someone that's genetically prone to anemia? You can't absorb iron as well. You can't store it as well. You're vegan. You're not eating a lot of heme iron to begin with, or you're having your curcumin multiple times a day with your meals, because people aren't being educated that if you have iron issues, low iron, you shouldn't be taking these things around any of these iron meals, or maybe at all in general.
I do have a question. I'm very curious because I know you're very genetic testing based. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, though. That is definitely your thing. So when you are looking into how to really assess for people, you know, what they may actually need, and we talked about how the follicle is kind of its own little system there. Now we're taking genetics first to see what like predispositions and what we may encounter, right? And then you layer in blood work, correct? Is that your path? Then we have the follicle, and how do we get some more insight into what might not necessarily show up in the blood work because the follicle is running its own little show?
Yeah. Great question. It's tough. You know, there's not really a way to just specifically test that, right? So there's no such thing as a perfect test, right? Every test has its strengths. Every test has its limitations. So with the genetics, you know, there are genetics where you are more prone to a magnesium deficiency. Now, that doesn't mean that's always the case what we see. But I love the genetics where they can really help us figure out more so the supplement interactions. Like curcumin can also block the enzymes that break down neurotransmitters. That's why it can help with depression. But if you're prone to anxiety or anger issues, it can actually make those worse in people. So, like, there was actually a study that came out. Well, we have all this data, meta-analyses that curcumin can help with depression, mood issues. A study came out where they broke up a study and gave some autistic children, I think some older adults with ulcerative colitis, they gave them curcumin. And finally, kind of proving what I've been saying for years now, this came out last year, that if you break them up based on their genetics, if that gene that breaks down neurotransmitters is slower genetically, it makes them more hyperactive.
Wow.
It makes them more aggressive. So it's just interesting. That same gene that's slower, guess what it's linked to? Whether you take curcumin or not, it's more linked to being a violent criminal, because you're more prone to be very reactive and a very short fuse. So you see you can see that there's some data coming out, but it's a small study. We have heaps of meta-analyses where grab a bunch of random people, throw them in a study. On average, it helps. But then when you start to break it up based on the genetics, you see completely differing responses. And that's really why I love the genetics, but with the supplementation side of things here, right? Because there's the genetic side. There's also just the nutrient competition as well with these things. So people will talk about taking zinc, you know, is important for hair health. Well, zinc can also antagonize copper, and copper is very important for hair follicle health. So are you overdoing your zinc, and now you have a copper deficiency, right? So it can go so deep, and, you know, people on social media, they just want to be told, what's the one thing that I take? And this is why people end up spending hundreds of dollars a month on supplements and just either not feeling anything or feeling worse. And hey, maybe once in a while they get it and they try something and it really helps them, and that's awesome. But it's just really crazy nowadays with the crazy predatory marketing. I mean, the number of brands that reach out to me on a daily basis, just like trying to throw money at me. I just started partnering with very, very few select science-forward brands now. And on the education side, I like before I partner with the brand, I'm like, hey, listen, like I'm going to mention like some potential side effects and who it may not be a good fit for. And I love the companies that say, great, because we want to have customers that are less negative reviews, right? But if a company only wants me to talk about all the flashy benefits, like I just can't, right? I want to be that unbiased voice there.
Right, absolutely. Having some authenticity when it comes to, your follow-up and what you're giving them, I think is honestly kind of what the world is missing right now too. On Instagram, you just see all these people that have all these brands that are just paying them to, give green lights on everything.
Yeah.
Do you have anybody that you're working with that you are recommending? I know that you recommend genetic testing as the forefront of everything, right? So then when you go to that next layer, are you always reaching for blood work after that before you move forward with anything? I know you're probably dealing with a lot of different issues. Do you have people coming?
Yeah, I mean, I work with people, like I've had clients that have Alzheimer's or cancer or very, very mold toxicity, all the way up to high-level entrepreneurs that like just have a little bit of brain fog, or people come to me like, I already feel great. I just really want to optimize. I want to make sure I'm getting out ahead of any future potential health issues. Genetics can really help us understand, are you more prone to heart disease from red meat? If you're not, I think red meat is an amazing protein source. But like, let me put it this way. I've had to tell carnivores that the red meat, their high LDL from red meat is probably going to kill them. Even though they said, oh, it helped my joint issues and this and that. I'm like, that's great, but it's going to probably give you heart disease. But that's not everybody. I have red meat pretty much once a day. I don't have those issues. My cholesterol doesn't shoot up from that. So again, it's two different sides of every story. And I'm not here to tell you one's right or wrong. Like in general, it's what matters for you. But back to your question. So I encourage blood work. I don't absolutely require it. I get the genetic testing done. I also work with people internationally as well. So I can't order labs internationally. I also can't. It's such a pain. I live in New York. I can't even order blood work for myself. There's so much red tape with. Yeah, it's such a pain. New Jersey, Rhode Island, New York. I can't order labs for myself or clients there. Those states. So, and then I really do encourage clients after 6 to 8 weeks on the program, before our first follow-up, I strongly, strongly, strongly encourage you, get those labs done. So sometimes people will say, hey, if I'm going to get these done in 6 weeks, I'm just going to get them done then. I do always encourage to get it done pre and post, but from my experience, does it help? Absolutely. But do I feel like I'm completely shooting in the dark without it, with the way I do the detailed genetic analysis and questionnaire? Not necessarily. And, I order Dutch tests occasionally for clients. People will upload their GI map, their gut testing. So I have clients with a whole host of different stuff. They'll throw in all their different labs. And, with my background, I'm able to understand a lot of these tests. But the one thing I promise my clients is I'll be very clear when I'm like, I really know this stuff. This is what I think's going on. And if I look at it and I say, hey, listen, like, I wouldn't say I'm an expert on this test, but I do see this kind of tracking and overlapping with some of these things here. I just want a word. My point is, I have no problem saying I'm not entirely sure. And I didn't realize until I did this with clients that how rare that is for a doctor to say. Because I wasn't trained to. I was trained to understand how nutrients affect the body, not to work with people, right? I was meant to be in a lab, except this is what I do now. So I guess I didn't get indoctrinated into some of that, the medical doctor ego that can sadly be a lot worse than I really understood.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I mean, it's fascinating. It's like, if I could just live 50 lives, because I would love to, I told you this when we first initially were speaking, I'm like, I wish I could just download your brain, because all of this stuff is so fascinating, and it is so relevant into what we are doing. What a trichologist can do with the information that you're giving for the most success with a client. And obviously there's no one line you can give us or picture, but specifically when it comes to addressing what these issues are. I mean, I know you'll say genetic testing first before anything, right?
Well, I mean, there's other good things you do, like
Right.
blood work to try and figure out, fasting insulin, fasting blood glucose. That's called the HOMA-IR calculation. So that's a good way to kind of gauge, is there actually some insulin resistance going on? I think in our world today, I mean, look how successful all these GLP-1 medications are, and they directly help with insulin resistance. So I think that and chronic inflammation are, the major overall drivers of this. I've done, most of the people that come to me with hair loss issues, they're doing a lot of the other things right. So then we look at the genetics and see, okay, that is a genetic thing, right? And again, if you have high DHT and it appears to be genetic, not only do I want you trying these natural nutrients, but I may actually recommend you go to a doctor and go on an oral finasteride. And people will say, again, you never ever want to crush no, they're through the roof, right?
Yeah.
Like you're actually you want to bring from high to normal.
Yeah.
You want to monitor that dosing. But I do think the insulin resistance, chronic inflammation for the general population are some of the major drivers there. Mitochondrial dysfunction, that can just be, downstream of that as well, right?
Absolutely.
But that HOMA-IR calculation with the fasting insulin, fasting glucose, that could be a really good way to assess that. And, there was a study that showed that doing calf raises after meals or as you're eating can help distribute the nutrients and blood flow throughout the body. So I recommend going for a 5-minute walk after each meal, I think is much better than doing one 30-minute walk a day. So whether you're doing 10 body weight squats, maybe not jumping jacks, that'll slosh your food around, right? But do body weight squats. It's called micro exercise. Do 3 minutes of a little bit of exercise right after you eat and do between your calls. That little bit to get that blood sugar, you don't have to go do a hard training session or go for a bit of a walk. It's called a postprandial glucose spike. After you eat, glucose spike, some influencers act like any glucose spike is bad. That's going to happen for anyone either way, but we don't want it too high for too long. So that's another good tool to kind of help a bit with that insulin resistance. I mean, again, then it goes deeper into, chromium, vitamin B1, all these. There's again, which flavor are you? That could be a whole separate conversation.
What doors
but,
open?
but it's even, the leaky gut, the processed foods, right? These all are playing a role in our bodies, and our hair follicles are going to be the first types of cells to really be screaming out for help.
Absolutely. And, I appreciate you talking about, too, sometimes reaching for medication because one thing that I think is, and this is just my personal opinion. It might be an unpopular opinion, but I've gone in different variations of, as I'll call, my crunchy lifestyle. Okay, I had 2 young children, and right after I had them, I was like, I'm not getting Botox anymore. I'm doing nothing that is anything. And, now I'm so far, I'm 3 years postpartum now that I'm like, okay, maybe there is a place that, is proper for medication and not to be too shut off, because I think it's equally as neglectful for us to poo-poo on medicine. And I really, as I train professionals into trichology, I encourage them to become aware of these medications because, as you say, medication has its place. And I'd actually love if you can kind of expand a little bit on that, because you did at the beginning. I was like, whoa, finasteride, what did you call it? Post-finasteride syndrome.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that before.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm in my little rabbit hole on social media. So
I
for
love
me,
it.
sometimes things that I think are mundane to me. So happy to go into that more. And you're absolutely right. I never regret my conventional PhD training. It gave me the principles, right? And on the holistic side, It's just so ironic. People will say, oh, big pharma is all about making money. Well, the whole holistic wellness space is way bigger than big pharma. You know, market share, it's massive. There's so much predatory marketing running all these crazy labs just to push. It's shady on both ends here. And I kind of straddle between both of them. You know, we need to have the deep understanding of conventional, but I do like more in the holistic context. But I'm not outright against all medications, whether it's these finasteride DHT blockers or SSRI depression medications. We just got to call it how it is. These medications were never really studied longer than 2 or 3 years. They're meant to be used. I'm talking about the depression medications. They're meant to be used as short-term stabilizers. You have a tragic death. You have an immense grief. You need some short-term stabilization for a really acute traumatic event. They can be great for that. But they were never studied to be taken for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, multiple of them together. They never were for the safety of these things, right? So it's time and place for all these medications, right? We need to make sure they're for the right person. If you're taking a medication that is lowering DHT, if it's topical in the scalp, I know there's not an exact way to gauge that specifically, right? But the oral, is your systemic DHT levels high? Check that. If you're giving someone an SSRI, I know it could be a bit invasive. You could do urine testing, isn't the most accurate for serotonin levels, but you could also do like spinal taps. That's invasive too. But, you know, just always assuming it's just a serotonin issue and just take this long term. What's the plan to get off of it? Yeah. Vitamin D affects testosterone, serotonin, right? There's all these other factors, right? You're going on a stimulant for ADHD or because you're tired, right? What else could be going on? So there's a time and place for these medications, but you just want to make sure that it's the right system for the right person, and ideally look into some of these root cause factors. I work to get people off of all these medications, but I also have people where we lowered their medication, their depression medication by, 70%. And they're like, you know what? I feel great on this. I'm just going to stay here. And I'm like, good for you. There's no shame about you staying on these things. If you feel better on that little bit and we lowered it that much and now you're not having sexual side effects, you don't feel flat and emotionless, but you just feel a little more level on top of the right nutrients, right? You really got to meet people with where they're at.
Yeah, absolutely.
For the post-finasteride syndrome, so that's essentially – could be multiple things, but the main thing here is crushing those DHT levels too far. And DHT is incredibly important. I mean, men, testosterone, DHT. It's important for women as well, but men more on the androgenic side, right? So the problem is that can stay down for months or years. You type in post-finasteride syndrome, PFS on Reddit, you will read some absolute horror stories of people taking the finasteride for a week. They felt really off and they're messed up for months or years. People taking a lion's mane supplement and they're messed up for months or over a year now because their levels don't really come back. And why do some people get hit with it more than others? It's an emerging area of research, but for years, on the forums and stuff, people have talked about this for years. But in the past few years, now we're starting to get studies, again, linking finasteride usage to suicide risk or depression.
Insane. Because
DHT is so incredibly important to have that vigor, to have that excitement for life. So, you have conventional medicine saying, if you're baldy, take this. On the other end, you'll have some people in the biohacking space that are saying, oh, you want to absolutely maximize your DHT, to have focus, to have tenacity in life.
Funny.
And some of those individuals, they end up needing hair transplants.
I never heard of that before.
Oh, yeah. So they're
max your DHT.
Testosterone maxing, DHT maxing. And yes, we want to optimize our testosterone levels. But, my testosterone levels sit usually around the 900 to 1,000 range. And
wow,
that's me. I'll take some boron that could help raise free testosterone, but I'm not taking heavy-duty testosterone boosters because mine's already pretty good. So people chasing higher levels, they're taking things that can help raise DHT as well, certain herbs and things to maximize that. And they preach these things, and then they end up needing hair transplants, even though they're, biohacking experts, right? So it's just like, clearly did that a little bit too far, right? So it's all about understanding. You don't want to blindly max anything. Like, people will also say, you know, you never want to be raising serotonin because it kills your spice for life. No, too much serotonin. If here's your dotted line for your body, here's 100%, and you're down here, bringing that up can help with your anxiety, your mental health, your mood, right? You just don't want, so people just don't understand. There's that dotted line, your set point. There's where you're at genetically. There's where you're at with your genetics on top of your gut health, your diet, your lifestyle, and where you're at and where you want to try and improve.
So you've said two things in this past little convo that I'm just like so curious on for your perspective of this. So you've mentioned numerous times lion's mane. And we know, like, lion's mane, I mean, when I was like, I had learned about ashwagandha, you know. I
hate that one. That one.
You hate
touch on
it.
that too. That one really messes me up, flattens me out a lot. Yeah.
I've heard that. So you know, I bought all these little adaptogen droppers, and how easy is it for us to get where you're using that in the same conversation as finasteride? And it's like these things. It's like, you know, one is a medication that we don't, you know, as trichologists have access to. One, you can get on Amazon little droppers and just put it into your, you know, bevy.
Finasteride or lion's mane, you're saying?
Lion's mane.
Yeah.
So can you give some, like, what is lion's mane? Because you had mentioned it a couple times, I want to know,
Yeah, so lion's mane is one of those functional mushrooms. You know, I mentioned reishi mushroom as well. Those two have been shown to block that 5-AR enzyme. So, you know, why some people would be more sensitive to certain types of things, but going back to that iceberg effect, you're going to hear lion's mane marketed for raising brain-derived neurotrophic factor. That's linked to helping to grow new brain cells, great for focus and cognition. I initially tried lion's mane because I have genetically lower BDNF levels. So intense exercise, sunlight, lithium orotate, CBD, magnesium, these are all things I respond very well to because, again, the dotted line, right? I'm down here, it can help bring that up. If I don't exercise regularly, I struggle mentally because it helps to bring that up. So lion's mane, I took it to try that. Day 1 or 2, I noticed I did not feel good. I felt kind of like flat, very like blah overall. And what do you know? It lowers that DHT. Now, do I have a blood test that says it lowered it? That's exactly why, right? But reading between the lines here, and again, working with other people that I've seen, if someone is prone to genetically lower DHT or even normal DHT, I may tell them, hey, you may want to be mindful around lion's mane, reishi mushroom, curcumin, astaxanthin, all these ones that we just talked about, right? Be wary of those. Doesn't mean you can never take them, but if you're going to try something with lion's mane, just be mindful. How are you feeling those 2 or 3 days after, right? You don't want to just be blindly taking it. But if you're someone with higher DHT genetically, I may tell you those may be things we may want to incorporate, right? So you see, it just depends on that individual there. But yeah, I mean, I don't recommend lion's mane across the board to people anymore. A couple of years ago, I was saying, then I tried it myself and worked with some people that were messed up by it. There's a lot of different ways to raise focus. This is labels versus mechanism. Hair loss. Is it circulation? Is it DHT? Is it vitamin D? Is it inflammation? Is it histamine? I mean, histamine is a part of the inflammatory process. I don't know if you are aware of this. They've done studies where they gave people antihistamines and their hair regrew.
Wild.
Because histamine is, again, a marker of inflammation, right? So some of these anti-allergy, antihistamine medications have been shown to help with hair growth, hair loss. But my thinking is, well, all that medication is doing is preventing your cells from detecting the histamine. It's doing nothing to lower them. Why is the histamine elevated? Again, gut health, inflammation, nutrient deficiency, right? So again, same workflow, right? But yeah, just because you take a supplement or medication that lowers DHT, why is that so high, right? If it's not high on your blood test, well, let me put this, that could be a good way to infer if it's a follicle DHT. If your DHT levels are okay and you're responding well to these medications that are lowering DHT in the scalp, you see that's a good indicator. If it's not super high in the body, that it may be more just in the follicles.
Yeah. No, I really like that that idea of it too. And
sometimes you got to read between the lines, right? Well, we don't always have these perfect things here when we're on the cutting edge.
Now, let me just ask you, and this will be the last thing I make you do on the spot, is if you were in our position, we are not as titled as you. If you could build a work through for a client coming in with hair loss, what does that look like in terms of finding the supplementation or the items that we're gonna work through this situation with them? And it doesn't have to be too in depth. Just what's your what would you do coming from your background?
Yeah, I'm trying to think, because without the genetic test, I require that testing, right? So I'm trying to think of a way to do it without that,
I mean, if that's your,
I definitely think starting out, I definitely think a full iron thyroid panel. I think that's just, looking at high sensitivity C-reactive protein, HSCRP, looking at fasting insulin, fasting glucose for that HOMA-IR value. That's a good way just to see, honestly, I would start there even before looking at, the DHT side of things.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's a woman around going through perimenopause, postmenopausal, I think that is a no-brainer to look into, the hormone side of things there, because, I'm not an endocrinologist, but my stance on this is I think that, humans were evolved, made, however you view it, it wasn't really all that matters for the advancement of our species is to reach sexual maturity and reproduce. Yeah. So why do women go through menopause? Well, I just don't think we really evolved to really live that long, right? Like why does that happen, right? Because we know that a lot of negative effects can happen post-menopause. And I do believe most women should be on bioidentical hormone therapy post-menopause. You just do want to be mindful. There are certain genetic factors that may be linked to increased risk of certain breast cancers. If you're on estrogen long-term, that's a whole other rabbit hole, again, of really personalizing these things there. But my point is, I think if the woman is around menopause age, look into the hormones there as well, because you could have everything else dialed in. Menopause is menopause, right? So I think those there are good assessments to kind of see, which of these buckets someone may be in to start before you just hop on all these supplement blends, the Prostate Supreme I mentioned, to lower DHT, when that may not even be an issue. And again, we're not talking about just a waste of money or a waste of time, but potentially side effects and making someone feel worse.
Absolutely. Now, where could your role be for somebody? Let's say I have a a client that I've done my typical things on, and I'm like, who I know would be really helpful for this, and we want to point them maybe in your direction. Where would you fit into that role for somebody in our?
Yeah. I mean, word of mouth referrals are very, very common for me, and it would be the same workflow I do for all my clients, right? Getting that genetic testing done. Now, what makes my approach so unique is I don't just have a computer spit out a report. I spend some time hand making that report. So that's what makes this a really high touch, really intimate, premium type coaching program, because it's not just here's the stuff. Then what? You bring it to your doctor, they don't know what the heck they're looking at, right? So it's really focusing on what are the biggest genetic factors, right? So my point is, I'm not going to put, you have normal DHT levels in your report. I will only put if you're prone to higher levels. So you see what I'm saying? Like, if that's not an issue, I'm not going to put that in your report. So I have a consult call with all my clients with me personally. So when we go through that together, I don't want to use up our time. So if this client doesn't have any mental health anxiety issues, we all have genetics linked to anxiety. But I'm not going to mention that if it's not actually an issue for them. So my point is, it's not just going to be a DHT hair loss report.
Totally. Yeah.
We're also looking at methylation. I mean, vitamin D can play a role. Maybe you need a pre-activated form of vitamin D, and that's why you live with a deficiency throughout your life, and that's why your doctor injects you with the wrong form. It still doesn't go up, right? So same process, right? And obviously focusing around the hair health side of things, but my perspective isn't so much living and dying by the label. Anxiety, brain fog, hair loss. I'm thinking on the back end, the nutrient side. Are you someone with leaky gut, with vitamin D issues, with DHT issues, rather than hair loss, right? Because I don't like thinking of the hair loss gene, right? I like thinking about essentially figuring out what your unique cells love and crave, give them more of those things, and then figure out what irritates them, what they don't want, what isn't a good fit, and then limit or remove those. It's very high level bird's eye view, but that's essentially how I do that, really focusing on the individual. So I don't care what all the meta-analyses say. I'm going to look at your data, your information, and make an informed decision for your body, because were you one of those people in that study that are saying curcumin's a good fit for you? Probably not. So why are we using that as gospel?
Yeah, absolutely. Great. No, I love that. And so I think in my audience, I have a lot of different types of people. There might be not trichologists here, or trichologists who are interested in maybe seeing how you do things. How would somebody find you to work with you? Is it through your...
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure we could put some of the links in the show notes, but at Dr. Tyler Panzer, I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. Like I said, my approach here is really hyper-personalized, targeted supplementation, also doing the nutrition side of things. So it's not exact meal plans, but which foods may be more irritating to your gut? Which foods are you hardwired? What types of carbohydrates are you hardwired to not process as well, right? So it's all aspects of this health here. And I always like to say, if you're a human being with human cells and you're open to taking supplements, I believe I could add value to your life, because every human being has millions of genetic variants, right? It just depends on how much you're struggling now, where you want to go, and what level of support that you want. Some people just want to be told what to take. I work with a lot of I train practitioners, but I also work with a lot of practitioners one-on-one where they're like, this helped my life, but now it completely changes how I view and patterns I see in my clients and patients, just by understanding this perspective of, I don't care what the benefits say of a supplement. We want to understand pharmacology, how supplement nutrients interact with foods as well. Because to me, food, supplements, they're all drugs. Drugs alter physiology. These are all things that can, like, imagine taking a finasteride medication, and then you're taking curcumin for your joint health, astaxanthin for your antioxidant health. Now your DHT may be well managed by the medication from your doctor. Now you're tanking it. So you see, and this can apply for all different types of medications and things. This whole hidden world of interactions, and polypharmacy is, by regular definition, like people taking multiple medications at once. How do you manage how they interact? But what about polypharmacy for medications, for supplements, even for foods, right? It's all these interactions that on their own, one nutrient may not be the make or break for you, but you're taking multiple together. I'll share one thing. I made a post about this past week. This perfectly illustrates it. There was a client I had where the supplement stack sent them to the hospital with a busted head. They were on blood pressure medication, and they were taking beetroot powder before the gym to help with exercise performance. and they were taking a pycnogenol, a pine bark extract supplement. It was actually, I've actually made posts about that. So like I heard about that from you. They were taking it for their ADHD, for their focus. They took those and they took a hot shower. Well, little did they know that beetroot lowers blood pressure. Pycnogenol helps with ADHD. Actually, pycnogenol can also help with menopausal hair loss as well. It can help with blood flow, but anything that helps with blood flow usually means it lowers blood pressure. So they're, again, the dotted line, right? They were too high with blood pressure.
Right.
They go on a medication. Then they're taking the beetroot. They're taking the pycnogenol. They go in a hot shower. Boom. They passed out of the shower, bashed their head open, had to go to the hospital, right? So from my point of view, I'm like, of course. Then they came and worked with me. Their doctor didn't even know what happened. They didn't even know what pycnogenol was. Not taking a shot at doctors. They're not trained on these things. And people are taking all of these natural supplements now from all these different sources that podcaster, that doctor that doesn't know you from Instagram, that lead magnet you got from your favorite influencer, they're not figuring out how they're interacting together, and it can really cause these issues. Now, that is, a more extreme, life-threatening example, right, where they literally could have died or really gotten seriously harmed, but sometimes it's that background anxiety that you just can't be at ease throughout the day. You can't relax with your family. Sometimes it's that brain fog you get mid-morning every morning. It's those headaches every afternoon after lunch. So it's not always these make or break life-threatening things, but it's also countless life-impacting interactions. And, I'm all about optimizing. I don't want to deal with, a headache just because that supplement is helping with something else. Find another supplement that helps with that benefit that isn't causing that interaction for you.
No, you're absolutely right on that too. And that's actually, why I even reached out to you to begin with, is because of that. We are so supplement based, and it really is a little scary. With those DHT inhibitors, what is the impact on estrogen? Because I've read very conflicting cases. Do you have any insight to what those natural supplementation that lower the DHT, what their impact on estrogen can be themselves?
So it's a loaded question because, I'm good at that. So some of these flavonoids, they can act as phytoestrogens. So are they really influencing estrogen levels, or are they rather mimicking estrogen at the receptor level, right? So, things like quercetin, another thing to maybe be mindful of there, right? So it's hard to really break down. I'm not aware of specific data that this actually raises those serum levels, right, of estrogen per se. Now, like Reishi can be more estrogenic, but not so much because it raises the levels, right? It can kind of mimic it at the receptor level there. So, and that's why we're never going to know all the things. This is just what is studied, right? And there's such a massive lack of data because where's the financial incentive to study how these work? 100%. Companies can't patent the molecules, so why are they going to do this? Just so people can go and grow their own reishi mushroom or go buy it for couple bucks, right? Rather than paywalling and price gouging for a medication, right? That's just the sad reality we live in. And, people love evidence-based nowadays, but lack of evidence doesn't mean that something isn't true. So you see what I'm saying? We're never going to have a lot of the things I talk about aren't exactly proven that this exactly does this in this exact subset of people based on genetics. I mentioned that one study for the curcumin, right, that did that. There's some of that data, but those studies are so rare and expensive to run because you also want to get the genetic testing.
Absolutely. All right, I think that my brain has a lot to process through. I really appreciate breaking down all the conversation that we've just filled this past hour with. Do you have any send away that you'd have? I have a little bit of taste for that I just want to leave everyone with, but is there anything specific that you have for our community that you think that we should make sure to take away from this conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I think the overall theme here of just being mindful around, some of these supplementation, and yeah, I'd be more than happy. Some of the free resources I have, some of the top supplement mistakes I see people make, whether it's the forms, the dosages, the types of interactions. So I'd be more than happy to give out that free resource there, and at least start getting people to think about, put these things on people's radar. And nowadays, with the age of AI, people can do research a lot more effectively as well. And at least now, they may start to see certain patterns, right? Where I'm sure trichologists work with people that are taking supplements for things beyond hair health. You may be able to pick up on, oh, you're having headaches? Well, that N-acetylcysteine supplement is high in sulfur and may actually give you a headache. That's on the resource that I'll send out, right? So it's it may, again, what I do is bigger than just one thing, right? It's helping people on all aspects. And hey, you were able to help me get off of, that headache medication because you realized it was a supplement that I was taking, even if you're not a pharmacology expert, just by going off of patterns with these things, right? A lot of health comes down to patterns, but when you're not aware of the patterns, everything seems random, and I don't believe in random. I believe in a cause and effect for everything. We just got to figure out what those connections are.
Wow, that covered it all. Took it right out of my mouth too. So thank you so much, Dr. Panzner. It was really nice speaking with you and having you here. And I will drop all those links into the show notes for everyone to check you out and work with you if they have not looked at your page and what you stand for. So I appreciate you being here with me today. Thank you so much.
Yep, it was great chatting with you, and hope everyone got some value. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Have a great one.